name's Rich, welcome back to me, my bike and I. Today we're going to get started on restoring the 1984 Honda VF750F. First things first, I'm going to get this seat off. Lock stuck. I've had this off before, so not sure why that is. Okay, I'll get to it from under there. Persevere. I'm so glad that's a plastic seat pan. They're all good and solid. I'd have thought they would be broken off, but they all intact. I mean, this might not even be the original, to be fair, but be a little bit careful. That seems fine as well. So, all pretty good. Both panels are fully intact. So, despite my highly critical first impressions, mostly due to the childlike paintwork, this bike is very clean. This battery looks quite new, so I suspect that is quite a recent addition to the bike. I was expecting to see all of this just looking like that cover hadn't been off for decades. And it all looks pretty good. I mean, this battery is pretty clean. It hasn't got, you know, big thick layers of dust on it. All the terminals are good, no corrosion. And actually a first look at the rear brake fluid reservoir. Looks like it's full up with good and clean fluid. I guess that's the starter relay. But everything's really clean. Normally clean round this before I took a lid off, but I'll be bleeding these through anyway, so it doesn't matter. Ooh. Would normally put that on the tank. That could have been done by the dealer obviously, but I doubt it because I don't think they've done anything to this bike. Let's pop that back for now. Right. Oh, not even tight. I think the former owner must have been working on this quite recently. Lots of giveaways. The fact that it still smells of paint. This looks like a brand new battery. And it's very clean. Okay. I like the way that comes off. Also not in the slightest bit tight. Probably no more than about 5 Newton meters on that. Just take that off of there and get that out of the way. Pop that back in. Let's grab the nut. Right, I'm never sure if you're meant to undo the negative or the positive first. Never caused a problem. There's not really any electronics on this bike as such, but yeah, you just blow a fuse, I guess. Go, just get that out of the way. Put that back in. Right, see what sort of voltage this has got on it. I reckon it's probably about 11 something. So the dealership did actually send me a video of the bike running, so it obviously had some juice in it at some point. There you go. Oh, that's interesting. 12.3. I didn't seem to want to turn the bike over, strangely enough. That is a surprise. Right, so what that could mean is that we've got a dodgy starter, or it could just mean that these terminals were a bit too loose. That would cause a cranking problem. Let's get these back on. Let's grab that nut, good. Right. I don't know why I'm not using a socket on this, it'd be a lot easier, wouldn't it? Good old fashioned spanner. Right, let's do that up tighter. This is actually the wrong battery cable. You can see that's designed for a car, I think. So let me change that out. I love all this sort of thing, diagnosing no start problems. Difficult, is it? Not rocket science. Let me get a screwdriver so I can push down on that whilst I'm turning it. Grabbed it. Get the spanner on it so you get a bit more torque that way. Of course, the nut is captive inside, so you don't need to hold that. So that's done up quite tight. Screwdriver on that would be forever at it otherwise. Right, let's give it another go. Well, we have to consider, of course, is it gear? Well, no, it's not. It's in neutral. The neutral light's on. Also, do I need to pull the clutch lever in? Well, that doesn't move because the hydraulic clutch is stuck, so it could be something to do with that, possibly. With the engine in the run position or the off position, oh, tried it. You can hear the solenoid clicking now, you couldn't hear that before, so I'm wondering if that was just a loose battery and maybe the starter motor's stuck. Can't quite figure out what's run and what's off. I think that must be run when that's down. I'm not sure. Well, that was entirely unexpected, a no crank, no start situation. Now, I knew it wasn't just going to fire up because when I went to view the bike, it didn't start. I saw a video of it running that the dealer sent me, but when I went to view it, it wouldn't start. We assumed it was a dead battery, and that's, you know, entirely plausible. It's the obvious thing to think. You imagine it's an old, very tired battery on there that just isn't holding a charge. That's clearly not the case. It's got, or had, when I just checked it, 12.3 volts in it. That's all fine. The battery terminals were loose and wasn't even getting a solenoid click. Now I'm getting a solenoid click, but it's still not cranking. There's obviously enough juice there to crank that engine over. It's just not cranking over. So, how to trace the problem? Where to start? I'm going to go straight to the starter motor. And I'm going to do that for a specific reason. I'm going to pull the positive terminal off. I'm going to check to see if I've got 12 volts there when I hit the start button. If I have, that means that we've got a problem from the starter motor onwards into the engine. If I haven't got a voltage there, that means we've got a problem from the starter motor backwards into the electrical system somewhere. So it's the obvious central point to begin with. So let's get dug into it. Let's see what we can find. First things first, I'm just jumping the bike from the car because you could strictly lay 8 1.5 volt AA batteries end to end and create a 12 volt battery cell, but you wouldn't have the cranking capacity to turn the bike over. That could be what's going on here. We could just have a completely gut battery. Now it looks relatively new. It might not necessarily have the cranking capacity that it needs to. If it just has been sat there for a very, very long time, it could be a dead battery. So even though it's showing 12 volts, if it's only got the cranking capacity of a toothbrush, then it's not going to start your bike. So I'm going to try and jump the bike before we start digging into anything else, because that might just show us that we've got a bit of a knackered battery. I'm just going to quickly check what I'm getting from the car. So we're charging across okay. And I did accidentally leave the ignition on last night, so I have only now got about 11 volts in that battery. So it's still doing nothing. Right, yeah, it's the next day now, and I stupidly left the ignition on last night on the VF, and that's kind of stopped play really, because I can't do anything meaningful without a battery that's juiced up. You can see we're just at 11.8 something volts, and that's probably because it's had a bit of charge from the car battery. But that test is definitely worth doing, because that could have just kind of told you what you needed to know really quickly without doing anything else. And it's a good way of just testing your battery. But it did make sense to do that check first, because now we know we've got cranking capacity. So what we'll do first, I'm going to take the scoop off the front of the bike, just down there, and the starter motor sits behind there. So I'm just going to check for power at the terminal on the starter motor, just check that across ground, hit the start button, see if we get 12 volts. Obviously not expecting anything to turn over. Clearly I've got to get that battery charged fully up again, but at least we know we've got cranking capacity now. So what are we looking for? If we've got power there, down on the ground near the starter, we're going to be able to hear whether the starter's turning, trying to turn, or not making any effort whatsoever. And if it's a case we've got power and there's just nothing happening on the starter whatsoever, we just literally can't hear a sound or a vibration coming for it, then there's a good chance that we've just got a faulty starter. We'll pull that off, we'll get it on the bench, we'll test it again, and then if it doesn't spin, we know absolutely it's a starter motor issue. If we get it on the bench and it spins over, then what that means is something inside the engine is preventing, is just kind of pushing back on the starter essentially, and preventing that from turning, or the actual starter itself isn't able to crank the engine because something's perhaps jammed up inside. Now it could be something very, very simple. We'll pull the clutch cover off. If we get to that point and we sort of ascertain that we've got power, the starter's working, we'll pull the clutch cover off. Inside there you're going to have like a reduction gear, a first idler gear. That's going to drive the starter clutch. The starter clutch in turn then drives the actual clutch itself. It's not always the case, it's not always set up like that. different engines from even the same or different manufacturers will be made up differently. That's how it works on this particular engine. So we could essentially have a jammed up starter clutch. If that's all working freely, when we take that off, we'll try and turn the engine over manually with a spanner, and somewhere in there we'll find the problem, what's either jammed or what's just not working in the first place. So it's a relatively easy trace. If it turns out we've just got no power at the starter motor, then of course we need to work backwards the other way to see what sort of connection problems we've got. So it could be blown fuses, loose wires, dodgy solenoids, all kinds of things. We just need to work back through it to find the problem. But we'll get this juiced back up, and then we'll pull this scoop off to get access to the starter motor. I'm hoping actually we don't need to take the lower radiator off to do it. Just take this tank off. Also loose. Everything's loose on this bike, which is good. Hell of a lot of noise going on over the road. Oh, it's on a fair old ways. It's coming out. See if anything spills. No, excellent. .5mm long reach is the smallest one I've got, so can't quite get in there, or can I? I can. Got some long reach Allen coulombs, but the smallest I've got is 5mm, and this is a 4mm, so to cobble together some extensions, and it's not quite clear in the tank. Long reach would have been better because it would have had a slim shaft. Okay, that should be out. Stick that back in the hole after. That's the fuel tank sender wiring. Take that off. Difficult seeing there, but I can't see any other breather pipes of any sort. A bit odd if it hasn't got a breather. There you go. Just need to get that. Through. I think we're in for a long project with this one. This is the problem when you look at things on camera. I mean, you can probably see how bad that is, but it looks 10 times worse in front of the camera. So let's have a look at the underside. Now that looks really good. This is good news. So it looks like all that rust in the tank is just a little bit of surface flash rusting. This looks brilliant. I'd be amazed if there's any leaks in that. And the richness of that red colour, that's what I want to get the tank back to. I am very pleased with that. There's absolutely no rust there whatsoever. I mean, look at the fuel sender. I'm really surprised that it doesn't have a breather. A little strange. It must be built into the tank cap itself, I guess. So the plan will be to, I think, wrap the tank So this will stay white. These will be decals that I'll buy, and then all of this, the blue strip here and the red, all of this will be red. And obviously I'll put all new decals on it, so I can get this bit in a decal set and kind of turn it to that sort of colour. But I think I'm going to have a go at wrapping it myself in sections, so it shouldn't be too difficult, because tanks are notoriously difficult to wrap. Anyway, later on we'll bung up that fuel line union and fill it full of a solution of citric acid and get all that rusty crap inside dissolved. And I'm not expecting to see anything leak out. And if it does, to be fair, it's only going to be a dribble here or there by the looks of it, and I'll stick some sealer in there, so that is really good news. Just filling in jobs really whilst I'm waiting for that battery to charge, so that's going to be a good sort of 24 hours. See, it's this kind of stuff that's just, it is really the biggest problem on this bike, is the cosmetics. So but it's this kind of stuff that annoys me, because there's no need for this, painting all this kind of stuff. Stupid. You know, if the plastics were looking a little bit off, you could have you know, just used a bit of like plastic trim restorer. So it's a mammoth amount of work, really. Just need to dig the paint out of them. Not tight, not seized. I do like these little screws. They're it's what happens really when you get a bike that's of a certain age. It starts to sort of predate all the modern things that you see that are similar across all bikes, and you start seeing a few features that remind you of days gone by. Rear cylinder was okay, so I'm hoping this one's okay. Well, it's low, but it's okay. Look, it's very low, but it's okay. I was just hoping I wasn't going to see any crystallization. Of 40-year-old fluid. I really wasn't expecting it to be bad, because everything else seems to have been okay on this bike so far, apart from the fact it doesn't run, which isn't a problem, is it? Let's get that back in there. Do a little fiddle with that. I think it's not quite sitting properly, but there you go. Back on. But some of these things I can just, you know, I mean, what I'm going to do, I was thinking about, shall I sort of get this bike restored bit by bit, so get it running and on the road, or should I just take it off the road and just do everything and not put it on the road until it's completely done? And I think that's probably more how I like to do things. Otherwise it will take me too long to get it completely as I like it, and I'll probably end up not having the time and leaving stuff. So I think I'm better off doing it this way, which is why I'm just that's not threaded, because they seem to be taking forever to tighten down. Right, I'm sort of taking everything off now, because it's all going to come off anyway. You can't even see through there, but then it's probably covered in paint. So many good things on this bike. It just bemuses me as to why anyone would make such a pathetic attempt at painting it. It's such a shame, because it's making me such a lot of, well, it will make me, I should say, such a lot of work. Having said that, as far as all the fairings in the tank are concerned, I've made the decision to wrap it. I've never wrapped anything, so that's something I'm completely, well, will be a novice at. But because the tank's going to be kind of in two colours, I think I'm going to avoid the difficulty, because tanks are notoriously difficult to wrap because they've got sort of compound curves, and I think I'm going to avoid that because I'll be wrapping it in two different colours with sort of decals over the top and all that kind of stuff, and I might be able to get away with having some cut lines and just making it an easier job. Just cleaning out. Just cleaning the screws out. So when you put an Allen key in there or a hex head, it won't round off. This is a 2mm if you're interested. Oops. It would help if I undid it, wouldn't it? Anti-clockwise. One of my pet hates is when people say righty-tighty and lefty-loosey. I think if you've got this far in terms of working on stuff, you should really know that without having to have some kind of memorable phrase. Right, let's have a look at this, shall we? This might be in a bit of a state because the clutch is completely stuck. Let's see. Oh, okay. No, again, it's got fluid in there. I mean, it smells bad, but it's got fluid in there. May very well just need bleeding out. Anyway, I just wanted to get that off to have a little look at it. So, let's get that back on. Yeah, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but I had a 1983, I think it was, Honda CX650. It was so bad. It was just beyond repair. Everything was rusted through, and I just had to break it, unfortunately, in the end and sell it off in parts. Because it just was unsalvageable. But I got it really cheap and I sold it off for way more than I paid for it, so that was all good. And actually I've still got the front wheel, which I believe is the same as the front wheel on this one, which means I've got a spare tyre and good brake discs spare as well, so all well and good. Okay, I'm going to take this scoop off now. We've got a bolt there. You've got one just down there, and suspiciously I can feel one just under there, but it feels like a DIY job. Let me show you. So we'll take that out, won't miss that one. Be so careful with fittings. I've just taken that screw out from under there and it hasn't affected the fitting of this at all, so I really don't know why it was there. And I'll show you the screw in a minute. It's just an ordinary wood screw. The screw I took out the bottom of it, just this little wood screw here, actually I think it's just holding the grill in, so it's nothing to do with its fitment to the bike, so I'm just going to pop that back in. I did think it was a little odd. I suspect this scoop is actually new because, well, up close it doesn't look faulty. I'll take this fairing off at a later date. I think you just got a fixing there and there, but for the grab rail, and yeah, fixing there. Not sure about removal of this. Just need to have a little look at that in a bit more detail. But I'm thinking this is going to be quite easy to wrap because it's not. I mean, that's a simple shape. It will remain white and is quite close to the ground. I don't think you'll notice any differences in pigment from the white that I'll wrap the other parts of the bike in. Just have a big red piece over the front, a big white piece at the back, and I don't think there'll be any stretching problems. You get rid of all the compound curves then, so all the issues that people have with vinyl wrapping I think kind of get reduced significantly doing it like that. So you'll just have a sort of a join in the middle, because it will just be red all the way across there and down the side, and you know, white where you can see the white, and then decals will go back on, including that sort of blue decal there, which I can still buy. The mudguard's a little bit of a compound curve, but we'll give it a go. The nose cone and the side fairings, again I can do the side bits in two halves with decals put across the join, and I can do each side separately with a cut line in the middle there because it's got a natural cut line. So I think wrapping it's going to be relatively for an amateur straightforward. So the starter motor sits behind that lower radiator, so I think I've got to take it off. I might just be able to drop it without disconnecting any of the hoses, but I'm not going to make this job difficult for myself. If it looks like that's going to be a faff, I will just drain the fluids, which I'm going to do everything like that anyway, and get to it more easily. Turning a bike over with no oil and no coolant in it is not an issue, as long as it doesn't start up and run for any length of time. There's going to be enough residual lubricant in there, and it clearly doesn't need coolant. Just coming in from the other side, I think the starter motor sits right behind the oil filter there, so that's going to be impossible to get to without removing that. I think I will have a peek underneath, but yeah, I think that's going to have to come off. I do like these coolant hose covers. I thought that was just part of the hose, but it's actually a spring. Didn't realise that will come off and clean up nice. It'd be quite a feature, I think. Think about these sort of side panels on the front fairings, can't you? Almost like be sort of one piece there, one simple piece there. Take these little vents out. I might actually do them black, maybe. Just going to have a quick look at the air filter and then I'll call it a day for today, because it's going to take some time for that battery to charge. Doesn't seem to want to move. What else have I got to take off? Which probably means it's just painted stuck. I don't want to force it. Oh, there you go, it's moving. What a surprise. That looks in pretty good condition, if you ask me. I'm not sure how that comes out, so I'm not going to force it. going to leave it there for today, and I'm going to leave the battery on charge so that tomorrow when I come back to it I've got some juice in it and I can start the hunt for this no crank, no start situation. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and I will see you on the next restoration video of the Honda VF750F.